group with him, and sometimes his jokes aren't that funny, but this one was kind of cute. It was about Thanksgiving. Okay, so this is what he sent out for Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. It won't take long. Oh, no, here it is. Oh, it says, here's the joke, leaving him. A woman is cranky because her husband had been coming home late every night. Today was especially bad because he decided to work late, and it was Thanksgiving morning. So she decided to leave a note saying, I've had enough, and I've left you. Don't bother coming after me. And she hid under the bed to watch his reaction. After a short while, the husband comes home, and she could hear him in the kitchen before he comes into the bedroom. She could see him walking toward the dresser as he picks up her note. After a few minutes, he writes something on it. Then he picks up the phone and calls someone. She's finally gone. Yeah, I know. About bloody time. I'm coming to pick you up. Put on that sexy French outfit. I love you. And you see her under the bed crying. He hangs up, grabs his keys, and leaves. She hears the car drive off, and she comes out from under the bed. Seething with rage and with tears in her eyes, she grabs the note to see what he wrote. I can see your feet. Stop being silly. We're out of bread. Throw the kettle on. Back in 5 minutes. And there was more. P.S. Just kidding. I'm sorry I've been working late, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. No need to cook. I'm actually buying flowers and our turkey dinner. I love you. See you in a bit. Mwah. Oh, isn't that cute? Oh, it's a perfect Thanksgiving, right? It's so adorable. That shows how we can make things up in our mind, right? Anybody else ever do that?
Oh.
Never, right? We never do that. Well, I was thinking about this. I know. I was thinking about this talk title and being with it. Originally it was running to God, run to God, embrace God. Whatever it is, we need to do that for ourselves. And I remember there was a part, I went to see the play Donna Summer, and in that play, she was at a place where her career had gone down, and that her managers had actually taken most of her money, and she didn't know it. So her sisters kind of intervened, and they helped her to run to God and get back to her faith and allow her to come back into that peace and harmony. And so it was really about her developing that. And as she did that, her career revived again. And she was able to make it. She took on what she needed to do in order to create more strength in herself and to be more aware of what was going on in her life. So what I want to talk about a little bit is from a book from Catherine Ponder. If you ever read her, I know, I love her. And she's so great because she's a Unity minister. She was, I don't believe she's still alive. But she had such great wisdom. So I wanted to share a story that she wrote in here because I said, gosh, I really want a good story to illustrate this. And obviously this book came off the shelf and it was perfect. I know, it always is, right? So she's talking about in here, how to create your gift of growth and expansion. And she says, and I'm going to paraphrase, she says that it's just like science of mind and what we do in our teaching. And the teaching symbol that you see up there is where we create a prayer. The prayer goes into the creative medium, or let's say God's hands, and then it is at the end, the bottom of the symbol is where we have the blessings or the manifestation. So that's the answer to our prayer. But sometimes when we have something that's very lengthy or something very complicated or something that's within our psyche and we're not able to accept it, because it can happen right now, in a moment, right now, in a moment. It's a miracle. But we don't believe it here. And so developing the faith and the trust that it's going to happen is where the prayers get answered. And sometimes you have to go to a practitioner because what we'll do, we'll create that belief with you. And then if they believe it, I could believe it. And that's really true, because where two or more are gathered, you know, we create that to happen for ourselves. But what she says is that you pray, you have something that's going to happen, and then what happens is it takes a while. Or something horrible happens, or not so great happens. Maybe the business doesn't work, or the relationship, or something else. And so I want to read this little story to you because it will illustrate perfectly. And this is, of course, one of the true stories. She used to have people write her letters. They would call her. At that time, they didn't have Skype and they didn't have the internet. Okay? So it was letters and it was calling on the phone. So this is titled, How a Businessman Successfully Handled the Second Period. A businessman found out how to handle the second phase. What she's talking about, the second phase is the creative medium. That's the center when we're waiting. Oh God, I prayed. Don't you gonna give it to me like in 5 minutes? Okay, so he's like, I prayed, I know, and here we go. He had purchased a new business on the outskirts of his city. He took God as his partner in the new venture. Don't you love that? So through tithing, he expected to prosper and did for a time. His new business flourished. Then suddenly, for no apparent reason, business dwindled. All of his efforts to make it prosper failed. One night, after he had closed his business for the day, he sat at his desk looking over the daily receipts. The results were so discouraging that he prayed for guidance. I think he was running to God, don't you? Prayerfully, he asked, Father, what is the truth about this situation? The thought came, this is a time to grow, to expand inwardly. That thought satisfied him, and a great peace descended upon him. That's the other thing. When we run or when we pray, you know, we allow the divine to bring that wisdom to us. Because a lot of times we don't have the answer. We have to sit and get quiet. I used to clean my house and start getting rid of things in my house because I knew that creativity would allow the wisdom to come in and through me. And it does. Getting rid of stuff in your house, but we need it for the roomie sale, is a great way, all right, to release energy that's blocking us. And I'm just going to stop for a minute. I'll tell you why, because if we're hanging on to things from the past, and a lot of our things in our homes, and I look at it and I go, why am I holding on to this? So I'm going to stop for a minute, because if you would take the time, and I know I'm doing this, and I'm like, why am I holding this? What in the heck is it? Why can't I let go of this? And then as you stop and listen, but don't beat yourselves up, because the key is to be loving and gentle with yourself as you're doing it. But I never thought about it, but I grieve every time I get rid of things. I grieve because it's from the past. It's things that maybe it was a good time, maybe it wasn't a good time. Bottom line, we have to grieve, right? And let it go. So I'm going to move on with what it said for him. Having been raised on a farm, this man knew the necessity for a growing period in every process. He reminded himself that the farmer plants the seed and must let patience do its perfect work before there can be a harvest. So, patience is also part of waiting for God to give us our blessings. The businessman realized that he too needed time to grow. The very night he began planting a new crop of good thoughts. Do you like that image? Okay. He started by picking up the day's receipts along with a handful of unpaid bills. Lily and I were doing this last week, by the way. He blessed them both. From the unpaid bills, he selected one he could pay right then, and he gladly did so, and he wrote out the check. From the day's income, he invested what was left in certain items for his business that sold well and had a quick turnover. He knew they would bring in quick cash. Instead of urging God in greater speed, he began to daily ask for daily guidance for his business transactions. Isn't that beautiful? So he ran to God, but he was willing to wait and hear the wisdom and the guidance every day. He began to pray more, to gripe and push less. Oh, that's a good one. Pray and gripe and push less. He studied and meditated daily upon the infinite possibilities of good. He dwelled less upon apparent troubles. Okay, that's a pure science of mind teaching. What we teach in Science of Mind is that as we allow ourselves to become more and more positive, that we're able to create that, there's a void within us, and we're going to either fill it up with negativity or positivity. It's your choice. So I was talking to somebody the other day. Yes, thank you, Isha. It's a little, is this a little loud? Or, yeah, I don't know. It just seems a little bit. But anyway, so what happens is that most of us have, we have all these little, let's say we have little compartments in our body, okay? And a lot of them are filled up with positive, but there's some that are filled up with negativity. And what we have to do is bring or ferret those out and fill them up with positivity. When I talk to clients, they'll have an old way of being and they'll have an old way of doing something. Maybe they have a problem with money or health or a relationship. And when something good happens, they almost push it aside because it's foreign to them, okay? So it's allowing yourself to bring in that positive energy, but it's not easy. My mom always says to me at 96 years old, I didn't believe this teaching for years. I didn't believe it. I just didn't think, it was too easy. It was too easy. And I said, God, preach, Mom. So anyway, with that, it really is true. We have to believe that it's that easy. So one of the things, I'm going to say this again, is that in our unconscious and subconscious mind, this prayer is being answered because there's something within us, maybe from the past, maybe growing up, past life, I don't care where it's from, it doesn't matter. I was talking to a woman at Thanksgiving, and she had gone through the MITT with myself and my daughter and my son-in-law, and she couldn't finish the advanced part because there was something that was blocking me, and I'm like, fear. And she's like, well, I just couldn't figure it out, fear. And I just, because I was afraid when I was doing that course, I was going to die. Because there was a part of my ego that just couldn't handle the intensity of that course. And so she wasn't ready, and it's okay. She wasn't ready to shift yet. She wasn't ready to grow yet. It wasn't her time. So we never judge others or ourselves when we're not ready. We never do. That's not going to help them. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to back up and read that again. Instead of urging God to greater speed, he began to daily ask for divine guidance of his business transactions. He began to pray more and gripe less. He studied and meditated daily upon the infinite possibilities of good. He drifted less, he dwelled less upon apparent troubles. Good things began to happen. Oh, I wonder, because he focused on what he wanted. A customer upon whose business he had counted but then lost returned unexpectedly and brought several new customers with him. It happened again and again and again. Through the natural flow of events, the man's business began to prosper. He later realized he had become a far more successful person for having had a period of seasoning. He discovered that the process of growth cannot be crowded into an instant. It can happen that way, but sometimes it doesn't, because the path is being paved for us. God is creating something even better than what we may have even prayed for. The season of harvest came in plenty of time, but only when he was ready for it, inwardly as well as outwardly. That's the other thing. We were talking about, I was talking to one of, I guess you would call him my grandkid's uncle, and we were talking about how when people win the lottery, they're not ready for it inwardly. They think they're ready for it outwardly, but they're really not. So he showed me this hysterical skit, And it was so funny because they were blowing the money as fast as they could get it, and we were just laughing because it's true of what we do, yeah? But this man wasn't doing that. This man discovered something we must all discover. In those quiet periods of growth, there first comes inner individual growth. Then comes outer growth and expansion in our affairs. How often we have tried to reverse the process. We may have wanted the outer results before we have grown into them in an inward way. Things are better for a period of seasoning, and so we are. A child grows without realizing it, and so do we. Okay, so that's that little story. Then I have a story from my past, and I met a woman, and she had a tool. It was like a consciousness tool, and you would hold on to it. Was kind of like you would hold on to a string or a little. It wasn't Scientology, but it was this. She had this big, long piece of equipment made out of wood, and there was a string. And you would hold on to the string, and by virtue of your consciousness, this was like, I'm going to say 20 years ago, that it would move and measure your consciousness, okay? So she wanted me to become her intern and learn this whole thing, and I don't know why I didn't. I was listening to somebody else instead of myself, and I regret it to this day because I think back on her. But how she knew that it worked is that someone would meditate. She was working with a man, and he would meditate before he got to her house to do this consciousness thing. And what happened is that as the more he meditated, as he built up the meditation within him, the higher his consciousness went. Not only that, it was the inward growth that he created, like she was talking about, but it was also the growth. He had a business. And what happened, the more he meditated, and he kept doing this experiment with, I don't remember her name, and as he continued to do that and grow within himself, his business grew. And it was exactly what she was saying. He was doing the inner work in order to have the outer manifest for him. So was he running to God? Oh yeah, in his meditation he absolutely was. So with that, I found something because I have a lot of people that come to me and they have issues with their emotions. Anybody have issues with their emotions? Never. We never do. All right, so I'm looking through and I go through all these blogs and for a couple hours, and finally I found something I think is really good. So this guy is a spiritual teacher, but what he talks about, he says, once one is conscious and aware of feelings, are y'all aware of your feelings every day? And you know what's going on and you can be present to them, right? So the lesson is that as we feel our feelings, we get present, and that's why when we pray, we're running to God, we're allowing ourselves to have that be revealed. I was recently talking to somebody and I said, oh, it was that same woman at this Thanksgiving dinner. Don't you love it? I get to talk spiritual stuff with these people, yeah. Anyway, she said that she really has become aware that she wants to keep allowing these things to bubble up so that she can pray and that she can meditate or she can do whatever she needs to do in order for it to change for herself. So if there's something that's making you unhappy, it says being conscious and aware, especially when times are difficult, you should endeavor to see if there's any action that needs to be taken, much like he did in the story, right? And he says, whatever it is, until the intention is in place to take the required action, the emotion will remain, and the situation can change at any moment. As the emotion is dissolved at some point, there is usually be the knowledge that to what action needs to be taken in order to resolve the situation totally. And when there's not the knowledge, obviously the emotion keeps happening, and we have all seen that. So here's what he says are the 3 tips. He says, practice being aware as often as you can. Don't we always talk about that? Pay particular attention to what's going on in our emotions and what we can do to change it. And then finally, look continuously within for the guidance or the intuition that God is giving you in order to shift and grow in your life. And that's really what it's about. But as my mom said, it's so simple and easy that we don't do it, do we? So it's allowing ourselves and maybe having the intention to, how many of you just want to be a little happier? Or have your emotions be this way, well, okay, this way, instead of this way, all right? Because this is okay. We all go on the little roller coaster, but the baby roller coaster. But we don't want to go in the magic mountain, okay? Because that's what we've been used to. So with that, we allow ourselves to just to get present to ourselves and allow yourself to honor yourself, to love yourself, and also to be kind to yourself as you're moving through this growth. Because without loving kindness to yourself, it's not going to happen. I can't remember, somebody was saying, they were talking to a guru, and they said, I love you so much, oh guru, I love you so much, I love you so much. And he said, it doesn't matter how much you love me, do you love you? And when I heard that, I thought, wow. Because as we allow ourselves to love ourselves, as we run to God and say, dear God, open my heart to myself, open my heart to me, then we allow the divine and all of that grace to happen and come into our lives, yeah? So with that, we are just going to close with a, let me see, I'm going to pull something from Catherine Ponder, because she always has some great things, and if she doesn't, then I will. Okay. Oh, this is beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to close with this quote from the prophet. The soul walks upon all paths. The soul walks not upon a line, neither does it grow like a reed. The soul unfolds itself like a lotus of countless petals. And so it is. Thank you, beloveds. Have a wonderful week. And